The wine hit her dress like a declaration of war. White silk, red stain, 100 aristocratic eyes watching her world collapse in real time. Elara Vance knew what came next, the whispers, the laughter, the inevitable exile from a society that never wanted her anyway. She'd clawed her way into this gilded cage, and now they were ready to slam the door shut. For good. But then the room went silent. Not the polite kind of silence, the dangerous kind. Someone was coming, someone they feared, and everything Elara thought she knew about power was about to shatter. If you want to see how a nobody becomes untouchable, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The Ashford estate smelled like old money and older grudges. Elara stood near the marble fountain in the grand ballroom, champagne glass trembling slightly in her hand, trying to look like she belonged. The trick was to keep moving, never stand still long enough for anyone to corner you, never smile too wide, never let them see you're drowning. She'd learned that the hard way. "Is that the Vance girl?" A woman's voice cut through the string quartet's melody. "I heard her mother was a seamstress." "Was? I heard she still takes in mending." Laughter rippled outward like a stone dropped in poisoned water. Elara's jaw tightened, but she kept her face blank, neutral. The expression she'd practiced 1,000 times in the mirror until it looked natural. Her mother had been a seamstress, still was, technically, though Elara sent home enough money now that she didn't have to work herself to the bone anymore. Small victories. "Elara!" A bright voice broke through the murmurs. "There you are!" Celeste Hartwick glided over, all golden curls and practiced charm. She was one of the few people here who'd ever spoken to Elara without contempt dripping from every syllable. Whether that made her a friend or just a better actress, Elara hadn't decided yet. "Celeste," Elara manufactured a smile. "Lovely party." "Oh, it's dreadful." Celeste linked arms with her, steering them toward the refreshment table. "The Ashfords always go overboard. Last year they had ice sculptures. This year it's— what even is that?" She gestured toward an elaborate floral arrangement that looked like it cost more than Elara's annual rent. "Excessive," Elara supplied. "Exactly." Celeste grabbed 2 glasses of champagne from a passing server, handing one to Elara even though her glass was still half full. "You need to drink more. You look tense." "I'm fine." "You're lying." Celeste's smile didn't falter, but her eyes sharpened. "Victoria Ashford has been staring at you for the past 10 minutes. Whatever she's planning, it's not good." Elara's stomach dropped. She didn't turn to look. That would show weakness, but she felt it now. The weight of hostile attention pressing against her shoulder blades. Victoria Ashford, daughter of the host, queen bee of this particular social hive, and someone who'd made it very clear that Elara's presence at these gatherings was an insult to everyone with actual breeding. "Maybe she's admiring my dress," Elara said lightly. Celeste snorted. That woman wouldn't admire anything that didn't come with a title attached. She squeezed Elara's arm. "Just stay near me. She won't try anything too obvious if—" "Elara Vance!" The voice came from behind them, cold, clear, carrying across the ballroom like a judge pronouncing sentence. Celeste's grip tightened. "Don't turn around," she whispered. Elara turned around. Victoria Ashford stood 5 feet away, flanked by 3 other women whose names Elara had never bothered learning. They all wore the same expression, anticipation mixed with cruelty, the kind of look people get right before they pull wings off insects. "Victoria," Elara kept her voice level. "Enjoying the party?" "I was." Victoria's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "Until I noticed something off." The word hung in the air like spoiled meat. "Off?" Elara repeated. "Your dress." Victoria tilted her head, studying Elara like she was a specimen in a jar. "It's beautiful, really. That shade of white is so pure, so innocent." She took a step closer. "Tell me, where does a girl like you afford something like that?" The trap was so obvious it was almost insulting. If Elara said she'd bought it, Victoria would mock her for pretending to wealth she didn't have. If she admitted it was borrowed or rented, she'd be confirming she didn't belong here. "A gift," Elara said simply. "A gift." Victoria's eyebrows rose. How generous. From whom? Does it matter? Oh, I think it matters quite a bit. Victoria's voice pitched louder, drawing attention. Conversations around them began to fade as people turned to watch. I think it matters when someone shows up to my family's home wearing a dress they clearly can't afford, drinking our champagne, eating our food. Victoria. Celeste stepped forward. This is hardly... Stay out of this, Celeste. Victoria didn't even glance at her. Her eyes stayed locked on Elara. This doesn't concern you. Actually, Celeste said coolly, as Elara's friend... Friend? Victoria laughed. The sound was ugly. Is that what we're calling it? How charitable of you, befriending the help. A few titters erupted from the growing crowd. Elara's hands clenched at her sides, but she kept her expression smooth, calm. She'd been through worse than this. Words couldn't actually hurt you. Not really. I'm not the help, she said quietly. No? Victoria's smile widened. Then what are you exactly? You have no title, no family fortune. Your mother takes in sewing. Your father, well, does anyone even know who your father was? The crowd had grown larger now. Elara could feel them pressing in, a circle of expensive perfume and predatory interest. I'm a guest, Elara said. Same as everyone here. A guest? Victoria said the word like it tasted foul. A guest would know how to behave. A guest would understand that some spaces aren't meant for people of uncertain background. Elara's pulse hammered in her throat, but she held her ground. If you have a problem with my invitation... Oh, I have several problems. Victoria moved closer. Too close. Elara could smell her perfume, something floral and cloying. But we can start with the most obvious one. It happened fast. Victoria's hand came up, holding a glass of deep red wine. For a split second, Elara thought she was going to throw it, tensed to dodge. But Victoria was smarter than that. Her elbow jerked, just slightly, just enough, and collided with a passing server carrying a tray of drinks. The server stumbled. Wine sloshed. And suddenly, Elara's pristine white dress was drowning in crimson. The cold liquid hit her chest, soaked through silk, spread across her torso like a wound. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Oh no! Victoria's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with false horror. Oh, how clumsy of him! Look what you've done! She rounded on the server, a young man who'd gone white as chalk. Do you have any idea how expensive that dress is? The server stammered an apology, backing away. Elara stood frozen, wine dripping down her bodice, staining everything. Her skin felt hot despite the cold liquid. She could hear whispers starting up like a swarm of wasps. Ruined. Completely destroyed. Did you see? Absolutely humiliating. I'm so sorry, Elara. Victoria's voice dripped false sympathy. That server was terribly careless. You should really... You did that on purpose. Elara's voice came out steady, colder than she expected. Victoria blinked. Excuse me? You heard me. Elara met her eyes dead on. You bumped into him deliberately. The whispers intensified. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Elara was supposed to flee in tears, humiliated and broken. She wasn't supposed to stand her ground. Victoria's mask slipped for just a second, showing something uglier underneath. That's quite an accusation. Do you have proof? I have eyes. So do I. Victoria gestured at Elara's ruined dress. And what I see is someone who clearly can't handle herself in polite society. Someone who's caused a scene at my family's party. Someone who needs to leave. A man's voice joined in. Lord Ashford himself, Victoria's father, pushing through the crowd. His face was pinched with distaste. Miss Vance, I think it's best if you go. Elara's heart stuttered. You've disrupted the evening quite enough. Lord Ashford's tone was final. My daughter has been nothing but gracious, and you repay her with accusations and drama. I won't have it. But she... Elara started. Enough. Lord Ashford raised his hand. Security will escort you out. The crowd had grown silent now, watching with hungry eyes. This was the entertainment. This was the blood sport they'd all been waiting for. Elara felt Celeste's hand on her arm, heard her saying something, but it sounded distant, underwater. This was it, the moment she'd always feared. The door slamming shut. Two security guards materialized at her elbows, ready to physically remove her if necessary. Victoria's smile was triumphant. And then the temperature in the room dropped. Not literally, though it felt that way. It was more like the air itself changed, became heavier, dangerous. The crowd shifted. People's faces went from eager to uncertain. Someone was coming through the entrance hall. Elara could hear footsteps, slow, measured, unhurried. The kind of footsteps that said the person making them had never been rushed by anyone in their life. The security guard's hands fell away from Elara's arms. Lord Ashford's expression flickered from irritation to something else, something that might have been fear. Victoria turned and the color drained from her face. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, and Darian Wolfe walked into the ballroom. Elara had never seen him in person before. No one really did. He was more rumor than man, more legend than flesh. The Duke of Thornhaven, the Wolf of the Western Territories. A man who controlled more land and wealth than half the aristocracy combined, who answered to no one, who'd destroyed entire family lines with a single word. He was younger than she'd expected. Maybe early 30s, tall and built like someone who actually used their body for more than dancing and riding. Dark hair, darker eyes, and a face that was striking in the way a blade is striking, beautiful but built to cut. He wore black. Of course he did. Everything about him was sharp edges and controlled violence, and he was looking directly at Elara. The silence in the ballroom was absolute now. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. Darian Wolfe didn't acknowledge Lord Ashford, didn't spare Victoria a glance. He walked straight toward Elara, his path cutting through the crowd like a knife through silk. People scrambled to get out of his way. Elara's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know why he was here, didn't know why he was looking at her, but every instinct screamed that she was in more danger now than she'd been seconds ago. He stopped 3 feet away from her. Up close, his eyes were even darker. Black, maybe. Or such a deep brown they might as well be. They swept over her wine-stained dress, took in the crowd, assessed the situation in seconds. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, controlled. The kind of quiet that made you lean in to hear, that demanded attention without asking for it. What happened here? It wasn't really a question, more of a command. Explain. Now. Lord Ashford cleared his throat. Your Grace, this is simply a small matter. I wasn't asking you. Darian Wolfe's eyes didn't move from Elara. I was asking her. Elara's mouth went dry. Every instinct told her to lie, to minimize, to make herself smaller, but something in his gaze stopped her. He already knew. Somehow, he already knew. There was an accident, she said carefully. Wine was spilled. An accident. His tone suggested he didn't believe in accidents. And now you're being asked to leave. It wasn't a question, but Elara nodded anyway. Darian Wolfe turned then, his attention shifting to Victoria. The girl actually took a step back. You, he said simply. Victoria swallowed. Your Grace, I was just lying. The word dropped like a stone. I watched what happened. You engineered that spill deliberately, then blamed Miss Vance to humiliate her in front of your guests. Victoria's face went from pale to flushed. That's not... Don't. Darian's voice cut through her stammering like a scalpel. I have very little patience for people who can't own their cruelty. Lord Ashford stepped forward, his voice taking on a placating tone. Your Grace, surely this is just a misunderstanding between young ladies. Is it? Darian's eyes shifted to him. Tell me, Ashford, when did you become so blind? Or were you complicit? The Lord's face went purple. Now see here, I saw. Darian's tone didn't rise, but somehow it filled the entire ballroom. I saw your daughter's malice. I saw your willingness to throw an innocent woman out of your home to protect her reputation. I saw exactly what kind of people you are. The crowd was utterly still now. People barely seemed to be breathing. Victoria looked like she might faint. Please, Your Grace, I didn't mean... Yes, you did. Darian turned back to Elara. Come here. It wasn't a request. Elara's legs moved before her brain caught up. She stepped toward him, acutely aware of the wine still dripping from her dress, of how completely out of her depth she was. When she was close enough, Darian held out his hand. Elara stared at it. At the signet ring on his fourth finger, heavy gold, engraved with a wolf's head. A ring that carried more weight than most crowns. "Your hand," he said quietly. She gave it to him, didn't know why, couldn't have stopped herself if she'd tried. Darian Wolfe took her hand in his, warm, calloused, absolutely steady, and pulled the ring from his own finger. The crowd gasped. He slipped it onto hers. It was too large, meant for a man's hand, but he adjusted it to her middle finger where it sat heavy and impossible. When he spoke again, his voice carried to every corner of the ballroom. "Elara Vance is under my protection. Anyone who insults her, insults me. Anyone who harms her, harms me. Anyone who questions her right to be anywhere she chooses to be will answer directly to me." He paused, letting that sink in. "Is that understood?" Silence. Then, like a wave, people began nodding, murmuring agreement. Lord Ashford looked like he'd swallowed glass, but he managed a stiff bow. Victoria's eyes had filled with tears, but she didn't dare let them fall. Darian's thumb brushed once across Elara's knuckles, a surprisingly gentle gesture. Then he released her hand. "We're leaving," he said. Not a question, not a suggestion. Elara found her voice. "I have a carriage. You have my carriage now." He turned toward the entrance, clearly expecting her to follow. She did. Not because she understood what was happening, not because she trusted him. She didn't know him well enough to trust him. But because staying in this ballroom suddenly felt more dangerous than walking into the unknown. The crowd parted for them. People who'd been laughing at her minutes ago now couldn't meet her eyes. Celeste stood frozen, mouth open in shock. As they passed Victoria, Darian paused. "One more thing," he said softly, speaking only to her. "If I hear you've spoken Miss Vance's name again, in public, in private, in prayer, I will ensure every door in this city closes to you. Your family's business contracts will disappear. Your social invitations will stop. You will become exactly what you tried to make her." He didn't wait for a response. They walked out of the ballroom together, Elara's wine-stained dress trailing behind her like a battle flag, the Duke's signet ring heavy as a shackle on her finger. The night air hit her face like a slap. A black carriage waited at the entrance, because of course it did, pulled by horses that looked like they could run down armies. A driver opened the door. Darian gestured for Elara to enter first. She climbed in, her dress making wet sounds against the leather seats. The interior smelled like leather and something darker. Cedar, maybe. Smoke. Darian settled across from her and the driver shut the door. They sat in silence as the carriage began to move. Elara looked down at the ring on her finger. It caught the moonlight filtering through the window, gleaming like a brand. "Why did you do that?" Her voice came out hoarse. Darian was watching her with those unreadable dark eyes. "Because I could." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight." He leaned back against the seat. "You're covered in wine. There's a washroom at my estate. We'll get you cleaned up, find you proper clothes, and then we'll talk." "About what?" "Everything." A slight smile touched his mouth. It didn't reach his eyes. "Starting with why you've been lying to everyone about who you are." Elara's blood went cold. "I don't know what you—" "Yes, you do." Darian's voice was soft, almost kind. "I've been watching you for 6 months, Miss Vance. I know exactly who you are. What I want to know is why you're so determined to pretend you're someone else." The carriage rolled on through the darkness, carrying Elara toward a future she couldn't begin to imagine, wearing a ring that felt like both a shield and a chain. And somewhere behind them, in a ballroom full of aristocrats and vipers, the rumors were already starting to spread. The Duke had claimed someone. The Duke had chosen. And nothing in Elara Vance's carefully constructed world would ever be the same. The Thornhaven estate appeared through the carriage window like something out of a fever dream, all dark stone and sharp angles, lit by torches that made the shadows dance like living things. It wasn't welcoming. It wasn't meant to be. Elara's fingers twisted around the signet ring, too large and too heavy on her hand. The wine on her dress had started to dry, stiff and uncomfortable against her skin. Darian hadn't spoken since his last statement. 6 months. He'd been watching her for 6 months. The thought made her skin crawl, and something else she didn't want to name. The carriage stopped. The driver opened the door. Darian stepped out first, then turned, offering his hand. Elara ignored it and climbed down herself. Her dress caught on the step, and she nearly stumbled, but she caught herself. His mouth twitched. Amusement, maybe. Or irritation. Hard to tell. This way. He started toward the main entrance, massive double doors that looked like they could withstand a siege. Elara followed because what else was she going to do? Run? In a wine-soaked dress, miles from the city, wearing a Duke's signet ring? The doors opened before they reached them. A woman stood in the entrance, older, steel-gray hair pulled back so tight it must hurt, wearing a black dress that screamed head housekeeper. Your Grace. She dipped into a precise curtsy, then her eyes landed on Elara. If she was surprised by the wine-stained disaster trailing behind her employer, she didn't show it. Miss? Mrs. Rothwell, prepare the East Wing guest suite. Miss Vance will be staying with us. Of course, Your Grace. Mrs. Rothwell's expression didn't change. Should I send for a physician? She's not injured, just humiliated. Darian moved past her into the entrance hall. Draw a bath, find something appropriate for her to wear, and bring tea to the library in 20 minutes. Immediately, Your Grace. The entrance hall was exactly what Elara expected. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, portraits of dead ancestors glaring down with judgment. Wealth whispered from every corner, but it was cold wealth, the kind that came with blood and conquest, not inheritance and lucky marriages. I can't stay here, Elara said. Darian kept walking. You can, and you will. You can't just... I can. He stopped, turned to face her. I just claimed you in front of half the city's elite. If you leave now, it makes me look weak. Do you understand what happens to people who make me look weak? Elara's throat tightened. No. Good. Let's keep it that way. He gestured toward a hallway branching left. Mrs. Rothwell will show you to your rooms. Get cleaned up. We'll talk after. We'll talk now. Elara planted her feet. The ring caught the chandelier light, throwing gold across the marble. You said you've been watching me. Why? I said we'll talk after. And I said, I heard what you said. Darian's voice didn't rise, but something in it changed, sharpened. And I'm telling you that standing in my entrance hall covered in wine, arguing with me, is not how you want to start this conversation. Get cleaned up. Calm down. Then we'll discuss why I pulled you out of that ballroom instead of letting them tear you apart. The words hit harder than they should have. Let them tear you apart. Because that's what would have happened. She knew it. He knew it. Fine, Elara lifted her chin, but I'm not some damsel who needs rescuing. No. His eyes traveled over her, quick, assessing. You're not. Damsels don't have the kind of secrets you're hiding. Before she could respond, Mrs. Rothwell appeared at her elbow. Miss Vance? If you'll follow me. Elara followed. The guest suite was 3 times the size of her apartment in the city. The bathtub alone was larger than her bedroom. Mrs. Rothwell moved through the space with practiced efficiency, lighting candles, laying out towels, adjusting water temperature. Will you need assistance, miss? No? Elara's voice came out sharper than intended. Thank you. I can manage. Mrs. Rothwell nodded once and left, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Elara stood in the middle of the bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror above the sink. Wine-stained dress, ruined hair, eyes too wide, face too pale. She looked exactly like what she was, a girl who'd been playing a game she couldn't win. She stripped off the dress, left it in a sodden heap on the floor. The bathwater was hot enough to hurt, and she sank into it anyway, letting it burn. 6 months. What had he seen? What had he figured out? Her real name wasn't Elara Vance. Well, it was, technically. Elara was her first name, but Vance was her mother's maiden name, the one she'd used when she'd reinvented herself 2 years ago. Her father's name, the one she'd been born with, was Thorne. Marcus Thorne, a man who died in debtor's prison when she was 16, leaving her mother with nothing but shame and bills. A man whose name was still whispered in certain circles as a cautionary tale about ambition without backing. She'd buried that name, created someone new, someone clean. And somehow Darian Wolfe had seen through it. The water cooled. Elara climbed out, dried off, and found the clothes Mrs. Rothwell had left. A simple dark green dress, well made but not ostentatious. It fit perfectly, which shouldn't have surprised her but did. 20 minutes, he'd said. She made it to the library in 18. The room was all dark wood and leather-bound books, a fire crackling in a fireplace large enough to roast a pig. Darian stood by the window, staring out at the grounds, a glass of something amber in his hand. He didn't turn when she entered. "Sit," he said. There was a tea service laid out on a low table between two chairs. Elara sat in one, poured herself a cup, with hands that almost didn't shake. Darian finally turned from the window. He'd removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves. It made him look less formal, not less dangerous. He settled into the chair across from her, studying her over the rim of his glass. "Better?" he asked. "Clean, at least." Elara sipped her tea. It was good. Real leaves, not the dust she usually bought. "Now tell me why I'm here." "Because I wanted you here." "That's not an explanation." "It's all the explanation you're entitled to." He set his glass down. "But since we're going to be working together, I'll give you more." "Working together." Elara set her own cup down carefully. "I don't work for you." "Not yet." Darian leaned back, completely relaxed. "But you will. You're very confident." "I'm very right." He tilted his head, studying her. "Tell me about your father." The question landed like a blow. Elara's spine stiffened. "What about him?" "Marcus Thorne. Died in debtor's prison 8 years ago. Left your mother destitute. You changed your name, created a new identity, and spent 2 years clawing your way into the social circles that destroyed him." Darian's voice was conversational, clinical. "Did I miss anything?" Elara's hands clenched in her lap. "How did you I make it my business to know things." He picked up his glass again. "Especially about people who interest me." "Why would I interest you?" "Because you're angry." He said it simply. "Genuinely, deeply angry, and you hide it better than anyone I've ever seen." The words hung between them. "You don't know anything about me," Elara said quietly. "I know you've been systematically befriending the children of every family that contributed to your father's downfall. I know you've been collecting their secrets like trading cards. I know you're planning something." He paused. "What I don't know is what you plan to do with all that ammunition once you've gathered enough." Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. He was right. All of it. Every word. "You're insane," she tried. "I'm observant." Darian set his glass down again and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop pretending you stumbled into high society because you're social climbing. You're going to admit you're there for revenge, and then you're going to let me help you get it." "Why would you help me?" "Because your enemies are my enemies. Because I've been looking for someone smart enough and angry enough to do what needs to be done. And because—" He smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "I enjoy watching hypocrites burn." Elara stared at him. This was insane. He was offering her, what? An alliance? A partnership in destruction? "What's in it for you?" she asked. "Entertainment? Leverage? Justice?" He shrugged. "Pick whichever sounds least selfish." "And if I say no?" "Then you go back to your apartment, keep playing your little game alone, and hope you don't get caught before you can execute whatever half-formed plan you've been nursing." His eyes locked on hers. "Or you stay here, use my resources, my protection, my name, and actually succeed." It was tempting, dangerously tempting. "I don't trust you," Elara said. "Good. Trust is for fools." Darian stood, walked to a desk in the corner, and pulled out a folder. He tossed it onto the table between them. "But you can trust this." Elara picked up the folder. Inside were documents, financial records, letters, legal papers, all related to the families who'd destroyed her father. "Where did you get these?" she breathed. "I told you, I make it my business to know things." He watched her flip through the papers. That's just a sample. I have more. Much more. Elara's hands trembled. This was everything. Years of work, handed to her on a silver platter. Why? She asked again. Why give this to me? Darian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, harder. Because 15 years ago, those same families tried to destroy mine. They failed, but I haven't forgotten. He met her eyes. I want them to pay. You want them to pay. The difference is, I have the power to make it hurt, and you have the motivation to make it thorough. So I'm what? Your weapon? You're my partner, he corrected. Equal stakes, equal risk, equal reward. There's nothing equal about this. Elara gestured around the library, at the estate beyond. You're a duke. I'm nobody. You're Marcus Thorne's daughter. Darian's voice was quiet. That makes you more dangerous than half the titled idiots in this city. They just don't know it yet. Something in Elara's chest cracked open. Someone knew. Someone saw. Not the mask she wore. Not the person she pretended to be, but the raw, angry, grieving thing underneath. What do you want from me? She asked. I want you to stop hiding. He moved closer. I want you to use that brilliant, vicious mind of yours to tear down the people who deserve it. I want you to stand beside me and watch them fall. And after, when they're all destroyed and you've had your entertainment, Darian smiled. It reached his eyes this time. Then we find new targets. Elara should have been horrified, should have been disgusted, but all she felt was a fierce, bright satisfaction. I want to know everything, she said. Every file you have, every secret, every weakness. Done. And I want to know why they tried to destroy your family. Something flickered across his face. That's a longer story. We have time. He studied her for another moment, then nodded slowly. My father was a reformer, wanted to change how the territories were governed. More rights for commoners, less power for the old families. They couldn't have that, so they manufactured a scandal, accused him of embezzlement, bribery, treason. His jaw tightened. He was exonerated eventually, but the damage was done. He died 6 months later. Heart attack, officially. Broken heart, actually. I'm sorry, Elara said, and meant it. Don't be sorry. Help me make them pay. She should have asked for time to think, should have been cautious, but caution had gotten her nowhere. Playing it safe had gotten her a wine-stained dress and public humiliation. Maybe it was time to try something else. All right. The word came out steady. Sure. I'm in. Darian's smile was sharp as broken glass. Good, because we start tomorrow. Tomorrow? The Hastings Ball. You'll attend as my guest, wearing my ring, making it very clear to everyone that you're under my protection. Elara looked down at the signet ring still on her finger. They'll talk. Let them. Darian moved to refill his glass. Talk is the first crack in their armor. By the time we're done, it'll be a chasm. What happens at the ball? You meet the first target. He took a drink. Lord Hastings himself. The man who forged the documents that sent your father to prison. The world tilted. Elara's voice came out hoarse. What? You heard me. Darian watched her carefully. The signature on the fraudulent contracts that destroyed your father? Hastings' work. He was paid handsomely for it by a consortium of families who wanted Marcus Thorne gone. Rage burned through her veins, hot and bright and cleansing. I want proof, she said. You'll have it. Darian pulled another folder from his desk, along with proof of 12 other crimes he's committed since. Insurance fraud, blackmail, a particularly ugly case of coercion involving a business rival's daughter. Elara took the folder with shaking hands. What do you want me to do? Nothing yet. Tomorrow night, you smile. You dance. You let him see you wearing my ring and wonder what it means. Darian's smile was cold. And then, when he's off balance, we strike. How? I'll explain the details tomorrow. For now, he gestured toward the door. Get some rest. Mrs. Rothwell will show you to your rooms. We have a lot of work to do. and you'll need your strength. Elara stood, the folders clutched to her chest like treasure. At the door, she paused. "Darian?" He looked up. "Thank you." The words felt strange in her mouth. "For tonight, for all of this." His expression softened just slightly. "Don't thank me yet. What we're about to do, it's going to get ugly. People will get hurt. Reputations will be destroyed. Some of them might try to hurt you back." "I know. And you're still in." Elara thought about her father, dying alone in a cell, about her mother's hands, worn raw from sewing, about Victoria Ashford's smile as wine soaked through white silk. "I'm still in." "Then welcome to the war, Miss Vance." Darian raised his glass in a mock toast. "Try not to die." Elara left the library, her mind already racing with possibilities. Mrs. Rothwell was waiting in the hallway. She led Elara through a maze of corridors to a suite of rooms that were somehow even more luxurious than the guest bath. "Will you require anything else, miss?" "No, thank you." Mrs. Rothwell nodded and left. Elara locked the door behind her and spread the folders across the massive bed. Lord Hastings. The man who'd killed her father, not with a blade, but with a pen. She'd seen him at parties, smiled at him, made polite conversation, all while he had no idea who she really was. Tomorrow night, that would change. Tomorrow night, she'd walk into his ball on the arm of the most powerful man in the territory, wearing a ring that marked her as untouchable. And she'd start to make him pay. Elara pulled out the first document, a letter written in Hastings' distinctive cramped handwriting. It detailed the exact price he'd been paid to forge her father's signature. 5,000 crowns. Her father's life, his honor, her family's future, all worth 5,000 crowns. She read through the night, memorizing every detail, every name, every crime. By the time dawn crept through the windows, Elara had a plan. It wasn't a good plan. It was reckless, dangerous, and would probably blow up in her face. But it was hers. And with Darian Wolfe's resources behind her, it might actually work. She finally fell asleep as the sun rose, the folders still spread around her like shields. When Mrs. Rothwell knocked on her door at noon with breakfast, Elara was already awake, dressed in a riding habit she'd found in the wardrobe, and ready to begin. "His Grace requests your presence in the south courtyard," Mrs. Rothwell said. Elara followed her outside. Darian was waiting beside two horses, one black as midnight, one gray as storm clouds. He was dressed for riding, looking completely at ease in a way that made Elara suddenly aware she hadn't been on a horse since she was 12. "We're going riding?" she asked. "We're going to the Hastings estate." Darian swung into his saddle with easy grace. "Time to do some reconnaissance before tonight's ball." "You want to scout his house in broad daylight?" "I want you to see the grounds, know the layout, understand where we're working." He gestured to the gray horse. "Can you ride?" "It's been a while." "You'll manage." His tone suggested it wasn't optional. Elara mounted the horse, less gracefully than Darian, but she didn't fall off. Small victories. They rode out together, leaving the Thornhaven estate behind. The countryside was beautiful in that way wealthy land always is. Manicured, perfect, completely devoid of real life. They rode for 30 minutes before Hastings' estate came into view. It was smaller than Thornhaven, but still impressive. White stone, sprawling gardens, the kind of place that screamed old money and older secrets. Darian pulled his horse to a stop on a hill overlooking the grounds. "There," he pointed. "The east wing. That's where Hastings keeps his private study. That's where the real documents are kept." "How do you know?" "I have people everywhere." He said it matter-of-factly. "Tonight, during the ball, you'll keep him distracted. I'll handle the rest." "You're going to break into his study during his own party?" "I'm going to retrieve evidence that will destroy him," Darian corrected. "There's a difference." "That's insane." "That's effective." He turned to look at her. "Are you having second thoughts?" Elara stared at Hastings' estate. Somewhere in that beautiful building was proof of her father's innocence. Proof that would clear his name. Proof that would destroy the man who'd killed him. "No second thoughts," she said. "Good." Darian wheeled his horse around. "Then let's get back. You have a ball to prepare for." They rode back to Thornhaven in silence. That evening, as the sun set and Elara dressed in a gown that cost more than she'd made in 6 months, Deep midnight blue, fitted perfectly, dripping with subtle wealth. She caught her reflection in the mirror. She barely recognized herself. The girl who'd stood in that ballroom covered in wine was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper, someone who wore a duke's ring and meant it. Mrs. Rothwell appeared with a jewelry box. His Grace thought these might suit. Inside were sapphires, real ones, a necklace that probably cost more than her father's debts combined. I can't. You can, and you will. Darian's voice came from the doorway. We're making a statement tonight. Elara turned. He was dressed in formal black, looking like something out of a dangerous fairy tale. He crossed to her, took the necklace from the box, and fastened it around her throat himself. His fingers brushed her skin, warm, steady. Perfect, he murmured. Their eyes met in the mirror. Ready? He asked. Elara thought about her father, about justice, about revenge dressed up in sapphires and silk. Ready. They walked out together, into the carriage, toward the ball where everything would change. And as the Hastings estate blazed with light in the distance, Elara felt something she hadn't felt in 8 years. Hope. Dangerous, sharp-edged, probably foolish hope. But hope nonetheless. The Hastings ballroom was a calculated assault on the senses, crystal chandeliers throwing fractured light across polished marble, an orchestra playing something sweet and forgettable, and enough flowers to choke a garden. Everywhere Elara looked, she saw wealth performing for itself, and they were all staring at her. Not subtle glances, full open stares as she entered on Darian's arm, the sapphires at her throat catching light like small fires. The whispers started immediately. Is that the Vance girl? Yes. Wearing his ring? Absolutely scandalous. Darian's hand tightened slightly on her arm, not restraining, steadying. Smile, he murmured. Let them wonder. Elara smiled. It felt like baring teeth. Lord Hastings himself stood near the entrance, greeting guests with practiced warmth. He was older than she'd expected. Mid-50s, graying at the temples, soft around the middle. The kind of man who'd grown comfortable in his cruelty. He hadn't seen them yet. Breathe, Darian said quietly. I'm breathing. You're vibrating. His thumb brushed once across her knuckles. Remember the plan. Charm him. Keep him occupied. Let me handle the rest. And if something goes wrong, then we improvise. He guided her forward, directly into Hastings' line of sight. Trust me. Trust. That word again. Elara didn't trust anyone, couldn't afford to, but she nodded anyway. Hastings' eyes landed on them, and his expression shifted through several emotions in quick succession: surprise, confusion, calculation. Your Grace, he bowed, deeper than strictly necessary. What an unexpected pleasure. Hastings. Darian's tone was cordial, cold. Lovely party. Thank you, Hastings' gaze slid to Elara, and she watched him try to place her. Forgive me, miss. Have we met? Once or twice? Elara extended her hand, letting the signet ring catch the light. Elara Vance. Recognition flickered. Ah, yes. You were at the Ashford gathering last week, weren't you? Briefly. She kept her voice light, easy. It ended rather abruptly. Hastings' eyes darted between her and Darian, clearly trying to piece together what he was seeing. A nobody wearing a duke's ring. The implications were scandalous enough to fuel gossip for months. I see. Hastings cleared his throat. Well, welcome to my home, Miss Vance. Any friend of His Grace is certainly welcome here. How generous. Darian's smile didn't reach his eyes. I hope you won't mind if I step away for a moment. Business matters. Miss Vance will keep you company. Elara's pulse jumped. This was it. The moment he'd leave her alone with the man who'd destroyed her father. Of course, Hastings said quickly. It would be my pleasure. Darian leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. 20 minutes. Keep him talking. Then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd with the easy confidence of someone who'd never been stopped from going anywhere. Elara turned back to Hastings, who was watching her with poorly concealed curiosity. So, he gestured toward the ballroom. Shall we? I'd be happy to introduce you to... Actually, Elara interrupted, I was hoping we could talk. Privately. Hastings' eyebrows rose. Oh, about business. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. His Grace mentioned you might be interested in a certain investment opportunity. It was a gamble, a complete fabrication. But she'd learned that powerful men couldn't resist the promise of more power. Hastings's interest sharpened. Did he now? He did. Elara glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers. But perhaps this isn't the place. Is there somewhere more discreet? She watched the calculation happen behind his eyes. A beautiful woman wearing a duke's ring offering business opportunities. The risk versus reward. Greed won. My study, Hastings said. This way. Perfect. Getting him away from the ballroom meant fewer witnesses. Meant Darian would have a clearer path. Elara followed Hastings through a side door, down a corridor lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her expression calm. The study was exactly what she'd expected. Dark wood, leather chairs, shelves of books that had probably never been read. A massive desk dominated the center, covered in papers. Hastings closed the door behind them. The click of the latch sent ice down Elara's spine. Now then. Hastings moved to a cabinet, pulled out a decanter of amber liquid. What's this opportunity His Grace mentioned? Elara's mind raced. She needed to keep him here, keep him talking, but she hadn't actually prepared a fake business proposal. Shipping routes, she said, pulling the words from thin air. New territory access through the eastern ports. Hastings poured 2 glasses. The eastern ports are controlled by the Merchant Guild. For now, Elara accepted the glass he offered, careful not to drink. But there are ways around guild regulations, if one has the right connections. And His Grace has these connections? He has resources. Elara moved toward the bookshelves, scanning titles, buying time. The question is whether you have the capital to invest. Capital isn't the issue. Hastings leaned against his desk. Information is. I'd need details, numbers, projections. Of course. Elara pulled a book from the shelf at random, pretending to examine it. His Grace will provide those. I'm simply here to gauge your interest. My interest depends on the terms. Hastings took a drink. What's the expected return? Substantial. Elara replaced the book. But that's not my area of expertise. You'd need to discuss specifics with a noise from outside the door. Footsteps. Hastings frowned, moved toward the entrance. Elara's breath caught. If someone came in, if they were discovered alone, the footsteps passed, faded. Hastings relaxed, turned back to her with a smile that made her skin crawl. You know, he said slowly, I'm curious about something else. Oh? He moved closer, too close. How exactly did a girl like you end up wearing Darian Wolf's ring? The question wasn't friendly, it was probing, suspicious. A girl like me? Elara kept her voice steady. Forgive me, but... Hastings gestured vaguely. You're not exactly from his usual circles. No family connections, no title, no... Breeding? Elara finished. I was going to say pedigree. His smile sharpened, though the sentiment is the same. Rage burned in her chest, but she swallowed it, smiled instead. I suppose I'm just lucky. Luck. Hastings chuckled. Is that what we're calling it? The implication was clear. Disgusting. But before Elara could respond, the door burst open. Darian stood in the doorway, and his expression was ice. Am I interrupting? His voice could have frozen fire. Hastings straightened immediately. Your Grace, I was just, speaking to Miss Vance, alone in your private study with the door closed. Darian's eyes were black pits. How thoughtful of you. I assure you it was entirely innocent. We were discussing business. Were you? Darian moved into the room, and Hastings actually took a step back. And what business would that be? Elara saw her chance. The shipping routes you mentioned, Your Grace. Lord Hastings was interested in hearing more details. It was a lifeline, a way to salvage the situation. Darian's gaze flicked to her, and something passed between them. Understanding, partnership. Ah, yes. His tone shifted, became almost pleasant. The eastern ports. I'm afraid Miss Vance jumped the gun a bit. Those plans aren't finalized yet. Of course. Hastings was sweating now. No harm done. I was simply being hospitable. Darian's smile was razor thin. How kind. Though in the future, perhaps hostility toward my guests should be extended in more public spaces. I meant no disrespect. Didn't you? Darian moved to the desk, his hand trailing across the papers scattered there. These are interesting documents. Business ledgers? Hastings went pale. Private accounts, nothing that would interest. Everything interests me. Darian picked up a sheet, scanned it. Particularly creative bookkeeping. The air in the room changed, became dangerous. Your Grace, I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. Darian set the paper down. I'm observing. You keep very detailed records, Hastings. Almost obsessively detailed. One might wonder what you're trying to hide. Elara watched Hastings' face cycle through panic, anger, fear. I hide nothing, he said stiffly. My accounts are in perfect order. I'm sure they are. Darian moved toward the door, offering his arm to Elara. Come, we should return to the ball before people start talking. Elara took his arm, grateful for the excuse to leave. At the door, Darian paused. Oh, one more thing. Hastings looked up, wary. Your signature. Darian's voice was casual, deadly. It's quite distinctive. I've seen it before. Hastings froze. On certain documents, legal papers, from about 8 years ago. Darian tilted his head. Ring any bells? The color drained from Hastings' face. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Darian smiled. Well, perhaps it'll come to you. Enjoy your party. They left Hastings standing in his study, looking like a man who'd just seen his own grave. In the corridor, Elara let out a shaky breath. Did you get what you needed? She asked. Better. Darian's hand found hers, squeezed once. I got everything. How? His filing system is alphabetically organized. Thorne came right between Thompson and Timmons. Darian's smile was vicious. He kept copies of everything, including the forgeries. Elara stopped walking. He kept them? Why would he? Insurance. Darian guided her back toward the ballroom. In case the people who paid him ever turned on him, he documented every crime he committed on their behalf. That's idiotic? Yes, but useful for us. They reached the ballroom entrance. Now we dance, we smile, we let him stew in his panic. And then? Then we destroy him. The orchestra was playing a waltz. Couples spun across the floor in perfect synchronization. Darian led Elara onto the dance floor, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers. She'd learned to waltz years ago, lessons paid for by scraping together coins. But she'd never danced like this. With real jewels at her throat, wearing a duke's ring, held by someone who made the rest of the room disappear. You did well tonight, Darian said quietly. I improvised badly. You adapted. His thumb traced a small circle on her waist. There's a difference. Around them, people stared, whispered. The scandal of it all. A nobody dancing with a duke wearing his ring clearly under his protection. They're all talking about us, Elara murmured. Let them. Darian spun her, the room blurring. By tomorrow, they'll have bigger things to discuss. What happens tomorrow? I deliver certain documents to certain people who have been looking for evidence of Hastings' crimes for years, people who will be very grateful, very vocal. He'll be ruined. He'll be arrested. Darian's voice was flat, cold. For fraud, for forgery, for a dozen other crimes. Elara's throat tightened. My father will be exonerated, posthumously but officially. Darian met her eyes. Your family name will be cleared. The music swelled around them. Elara felt something crack open in her chest. Relief, grief, vindication. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. This is only the first one. Darian's grip tightened. There are 6 more families on your list, 6 more people who destroyed your father. I know. And after Hastings falls, they'll know we're coming. They'll circle the wagons, get defensive, dangerous. Good. Elara's voice came out harder than she expected. Let them be scared. Darian smiled. There she is. Who? The woman who walked into that ballroom covered in wine with her head held high. His eyes held hers. The one who didn't break, didn't run. I wanted to run, but you didn't. The waltz ended. Darian stepped back, bowed formally. That's what matters. Applause rippled through the ballroom. Elara curtsied, her heart still racing. Across the room she caught sight of Hastings. He stood near the windows, watching them with undisguised hatred. Good. She wanted him to hate her, wanted him to know, to understand what was coming. Elara Vance, what? The voice came from behind her, female, sharp. Elara turned. A woman in her 40s stood there, dressed in silver silk, dripping with diamonds. Lady Catherine Blackwood, one of the names on her list, one of the families who'd paid Hastings to forge those documents. Lady Blackwood, Elara kept her voice neutral. I don't believe we've been properly introduced. Catherine's smile was all teeth. Though I've certainly heard your name recently. Have you? Oh yes, you've caused quite a stir. Catherine's eyes dropped to the signet ring. Wearing his Grace's ring, how bold. Darian appeared at Elara's elbow. Catherine, still collecting diamonds, I see. Darian, Catherine's smile tightened. Still collecting strays? The insult landed like a slap. Elara's hands clenched, but Darian just laughed. Strays? He looked at Elara with something warm in his eyes. No, I'd call Miss Vance more of a strategic acquisition. How romantic. Catherine's tone dripped acid, though I must say I'm surprised. She's so young, so inexperienced, so utterly beneath your usual standards. My standards are my own business. Darian's voice went cold. As is my choice of company. Of course. Catherine's gaze slid back to Elara. I simply worry about the girl. These circles can be so treacherous for those unfamiliar with the rules. I'm learning fast, Elara said quietly. Are you? Catherine stepped closer. Then let me offer some free advice. Men like Darian Wolfe don't protect people out of kindness. They collect leverage, assets, tools to be used and discarded when they're no longer useful. Catherine, Darian's voice carried a warning. I'm simply being honest. Catherine's smile never wavered. Someone should warn the poor girl before she gets hurt. Elara met her eyes. I can take care of myself. Can you? Catherine's expression shifted, became almost pitying. Oh, darling, you really have no idea what you've walked into, do you? Before Elara could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance. People were shouting. Someone screamed. The orchestra stopped playing. Darian's hand found Elara's arm, pulling her back. What's happening? She asked. I don't know. His voice was tense. The crowd parted, and Elara saw Lord Hastings being led away by uniformed guards. Not tomorrow, tonight. Hastings was struggling, his face purple with rage. This is an outrage. I've done nothing wrong. I demand— You're under arrest, one of the guards said loudly, for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit perjury. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Elara stared at Darian. You said tomorrow. I lied. His expression was grim. I sent the documents 2 hours ago. I knew they'd move fast. But I needed to see his face when it happened. Darian's eyes were locked on Hastings. Needed him to know exactly who did this to him. Hastings' gaze swept the room, wild and desperate, and landed on Darian. Understanding flooded his features. You, he snarled. You did this! Darian said nothing, just smiled. Hastings lunged toward them, but the guards held him back. You'll pay for this, Hastings screamed. Both of you. I'll tell them everything, every name, every family, every crime. One of the guards clamped a hand over his mouth. They dragged him out, still struggling. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Then Lady Blackwood laughed. It was a terrible sound, high and brittle. Well, she said loudly, I suppose that answers the question of what you've been up to, Darian. Every eye in the room turned to them. Darian faced the crowd calmly. Lord Hastings was a criminal. I simply provided evidence of his crimes to the proper authorities. If anyone else in this room has similar skeletons in their closets— He paused, letting the threat hang. I suggest you start sleeping lightly. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Fear, anger, calculation. This isn't over, Catherine said quietly, her voice for Darian and Elara alone. You've just declared war. Good. Darian's smile was sharp. I've been bored. Catherine's eyes flicked to Elara. You poor, stupid girl. You've tied yourself to a madman. Maybe, Elara said. Or maybe I've just found someone as angry as I am. Catherine's expression shifted. Surprise, then something darker. Recognition. Wait. She stared at Elara. I know you. Not from the parties, from somewhere else. Her eyes widened. You're Marcus Thorne's daughter. The name dropped like a bomb. Elara's blood went cold. Ah! Catherine's smile returned, vicious and knowing. Now it makes sense. The revenge plot. The partnership with Darian. You're not his lover, you're his weapon. Catherine, Darian started. Oh, this is rich. Catherine raised her voice, addressing the room. Everyone wondering who Elara Vance really is? She's Marcus Thorne's daughter, the traitor's child, here to destroy us all. The ballroom exploded. Shouts, accusations, people backing away from Elara like she carried plague. She infiltrated society under false pretenses, used a fake name, seduced the Duke to gain power. Elara's vision swam. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Her identity was supposed to stay secret until Darian's arm wrapped around her waist, solid and unyielding. Yes, he said loudly, cutting through the noise. She's Marcus Thorne's daughter. And yes, she's here for revenge, against every single person in this room who destroyed an innocent man to protect your own greed. Stunned silence. You all thought you were safe, Darian continued. Thought your crimes were buried deep enough. But Hastings kept records, meticulous records. And now I have all of them. Someone near the back gasped. So here's what's going to happen. Darian's voice was iron. You're going to leave Miss Vance alone. You're going to treat her with the respect you denied her father. And you're going to pray that when I dig through Hastings' files, your names don't appear too often. You can't do this, someone shouted. You can't threaten us all. I'm not threatening. Darian's smile was cold. I'm promising. Touch her, and I destroy you. Speak against her, and I ruin you. Come near her with anything but respect, and I will burn your entire life to the ground. The crowd was frozen, terrified. And then Catherine laughed again. You've miscalculated, Darian. She was smiling, but her eyes were dead. You think we're afraid of you? We're the old families. We've survived worse than one angry duke and his pet orphan. Have you? Darian's tone was curious, almost amused. We have resources, connections, power you can't even imagine. Catherine stepped forward. You've made yourself an enemy of everyone in this room, and we will crush you. You can try. Darian's grip tightened on Elara. But I've been preparing for this fight a lot longer than you think. So have we. Catherine's smile widened. And unlike you, we don't have a weakness. Her eyes flicked to Elara. The implication was clear. If you touch her, Darian started. Who said anything about touching her? Catherine's tone was light, poisonous. There are so many ways to hurt someone without laying a finger on them. Reputation, family, that poor mother of hers still taking and sewing in her tiny apartment on Riverside Street. Elara's heart stopped. Catherine, Darian's voice was deadly quiet. Choose your next words very carefully. Oh, I'm not threatening. Catherine echoed his earlier words mockingly. I'm simply observing. It would be such a shame if something happened to Mrs. Thorne. An accident, a fire, a robbery gone wrong. Rage exploded in Elara's chest. She moved before thinking, her hand connecting with Catherine's face in a sharp crack that echoed through the ballroom. Catherine stumbled back, hand flying to her cheek. The room went utterly silent. Don't you ever, Elara's voice shook with fury, threaten my mother again. Catherine's eyes blazed. You little... But Darian was already moving, placing himself between them. We're leaving, he said. Now. He pulled Elara toward the exit. The crowd parted, but their faces were hostile now, dangerous. As they reached the door, Catherine's voice rang out behind them. This is war, Darian Wolfe, and in war everyone loses something they love. They didn't stop, didn't look back. They made it to the carriage, climbed in, and the driver cracked the whip. Only when they were moving, the Hastings estate disappearing behind them, did Elara let herself shake. "She knows where my mother lives," she whispered. "I'll have guards posted tonight." Darian was already pulling out a small notebook, scribbling addresses. "Around-the-clock protection. She won't be touched." "You can't promise that." "I just did." He looked up, his eyes fierce. "No one touches your mother. No one. I'll burn the entire city down first." Elara believed him. And that's what terrified her, because they'd just declared open war on the most powerful families in the territory, and wars had casualties. The question was, who would fall first? The question was, who would fall first? Elara didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Catherine Blackwood smile, heard the threat against her mother echoing in her skull. By dawn, she was dressed and pacing the guest suite like a caged animal. A knock at the door made her jump. "Come in." Mrs. Rothwell entered carrying a breakfast tray. "His Grace requests your presence in the study when you're ready." "I'm ready now." "Perhaps you should eat first, miss. You look—" "I'm fine." Elara was already moving toward the door. "Where's the study?" Mrs. Rothwell led her through the maze of corridors to a room on the second floor. It was smaller than the library, more functional. Maps covered one wall. The other held a massive board covered in papers, strings connecting different documents like a spider's web. Darian stood in front of it, still wearing last night's clothes. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Your mother is safe," he said without turning around. 4 guards outside her building, 2 inside posing as tenants. No one gets near her without going through them. Relief flooded through Elara. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. This is my fault." Darian finally turned to face her. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight. "I pushed too hard last night. Exposed you before you were ready. Catherine would have figured it out eventually. Maybe, but not like that. Not in front of everyone." He rubbed a hand over his face. "I made you a target." "I was already a target." Elara moved closer to the board, studying the web of connections. "The moment I put on your ring, I became one." "The ring was meant to protect you." "It did. It does." She traced one of the strings with her finger. "But protection isn't the same as safety. I knew that going in." Darian watched her for a long moment. "You're not angry." "I'm furious." Elara turned to face him. "But not at you. At them. At every person in that ballroom who stood by while my father died, who profited from his destruction. They're going to come after you now, after both of us. Let them try." The words came out harder than she intended. "I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending to be someone I'm not." A ghost of a smile touched Darian's mouth. "Who are you then?" "Marcus Thorne's daughter." Elara lifted her chin. "And I'm done apologizing for it." "Good." Darian moved to his desk, pulled out a thick folder. "Because we're about to make things much worse." He spread the contents across the desk. Documents, letters, financial records, all from Hastings' study. "He kept everything," Darian said. "Every transaction, every bribe, every forged signature." He tapped a particular document. "This one links Catherine Blackwood directly to your father's case. She paid Hastings 3,000 crowns to fabricate evidence." Elara's hands trembled as she picked up the paper. Catherine's signature was right there, bold and damning. 3,000 crowns, she whispered. For a lie. For your father's life. Darian pulled out more documents. Lord Pemberton paid 2,000. The Ashford family, yes, Victoria's father, contributed 1,500. In total, 6 families pooled money to destroy one man. Why? Elara's voice cracked. What did he do that was so dangerous? He proposed land reforms. Darian handed her another document, this one in her father's handwriting. Wanted to break up the massive estates, redistribute property to tenant farmers, give commoners actual ownership. Elara read her father's words, her vision blurring. He'd been trying to help people, and they'd killed him for it. They couldn't let that happen, Darian continued. Their entire power structure depends on controlling land. So they manufactured a scandal, had him arrested, and let him rot in prison until he died. And no one stopped them. Elara set the document down carefully. No one questioned it. Your father had no powerful allies, no protection. Darian's eyes met hers. You do. The weight of those words settled between them. What's the plan? Elara asked. We use these documents the same way we used Hastings. Release them publicly. Let the scandal destroy them. That won't be enough. Elara moved back to the board, studying the connections. They'll just close ranks, buy their way out. Hastings was alone. These families have each other. So we separate them. Darian moved to stand beside her. Turn them against each other. How? By making them believe one of them is the leak. A sharp smile crossed his face. If they think someone in their circle is feeding me information, they'll tear each other apart trying to find the traitor. Elara's pulse quickened. That's brilliant. That's brutal, Darian corrected. And it'll work, but we need to be careful. Once they start turning on each other, things will get violent. More violent than threatening my mother? Yes. His tone was flat. These people have killed before. They'll do it again if they feel cornered. Elara thought about that. About the kind of people who could pay 3,000 crowns to destroy an innocent man and sleep soundly afterward. Then we corner them first, she said. Darian studied her face. You're sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. All right. He turned back to the desk, started organizing documents into piles. We start with Catherine. She threatened your mother. That was a mistake. It shows she's scared. Scared people are dangerous. Scared people make mistakes. Darian pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, began writing. We're going to send her a letter, anonymous, suggesting that someone in her inner circle is working with me. She won't believe it. She will if we give her proof. He gestured to one of the document piles. These are records of meetings between the 6 families. Dates, locations, topics discussed. Information only an insider would know. Where did you get these? Hastings wasn't the only one I've had people watching. Darian's smile was grim. I told you, I make it my business to know things. Elara picked up one of the meeting records. It detailed a gathering 3 months ago at Lord Pemberton's estate. The families had met to discuss the wolf problem. Her. Well, Darian specifically, but now her too. They've been planning this, she said. For years. Darian took the document from her. Ever since my father tried to reform the territorial laws. They've been waiting for me to make a move. And now you have. Now we have, he corrected. They're not just fighting me anymore. They're fighting us. The word settled warm in Elara's chest. Us. So we send Catherine this letter, Elara said. Make her paranoid. What then? Then we do the same to Pemberton, and Ashford, and the others. Each one gets information that makes them suspect a different member of the group. They'll communicate, compare notes. They'll try. Darian's eyes gleamed. But we're going to make sure each letter contains just enough truth that they can't dismiss it entirely. Just enough specific detail that it has to have come from someone who was actually there. You're going to make them destroy themselves. I'm going to give them the rope. Darian met her eyes. They'll do the hanging themselves. It was ruthless, calculated, exactly the kind of strategy these families would use against anyone who threatened them. When do we start? Elara asked. Today. Darian handed her a pen. Help me write these letters. You know these people better than I do. You've been watching them for 2 years. You'll know exactly which details will cut deepest. They worked through the morning, crafting each letter with surgical precision. Catherine's letter suggested that Lord Pemberton was the leak, backing it up with details about a private conversation they'd had about Darian's investigative methods. Pemberton's letter pointed to Lady Ashford, including specifics about her financial troubles that only someone in her confidence would know. Each letter was a masterpiece of manipulation. By noon, they had 6 letters ready, 6 carefully planted seeds of distrust. These need to be delivered anonymously, Darian said. Can't be traced back to either of us. I have an idea. Elara pulled out the list of names she'd been compiling for 2 years. There are people who owe me favors, small ones, servants, shop clerks, people these families never notice. You've been building a network. I've been surviving. Elara scanned her list. But yes, I have people who can deliver these without being connected to me. Do it. Darian stood. Darian, I need to visit the prison, see how cooperative Hastings is feeling. You think he'll talk? I think he's desperate enough to try bargaining. Darian shrugged into his jacket. If he gives us anything useful, we'll use it. If not, he gestured to the letters. We have backup plans. After he left, Elara spent the afternoon making arrangements. She sent messages through carefully established channels, each one directing a specific person to deliver a specific letter at a specific time. By evening, all 6 letters were in motion. Now they waited. Mrs. Rothwell brought dinner to the study. Elara had been too focused to notice she'd skipped lunch. She ate mechanically, her mind running through scenarios. Darian returned just after dark. Hastings is talking, he said without preamble. Gave up 3 more names. Smaller players, but connected to the main families. What did you promise him? A reduced sentence. Better prison conditions. The usual. Darian poured himself a drink. He also confirmed that there's a gathering planned. All 6 families, 3 days from now at the Pemberton estate. Elara's pulse jumped. All of them in one place. Discussing how to handle us. Darian's smile was sharp. By then, our letters will have done their work. They'll be suspicious of each other, paranoid, looking for traitors. And we'll be there? Not exactly. Darian pulled out a map, spread it on the desk. We'll be nearby. I have people who can listen in, report back what's said. I want to be there. Elara moved closer to the map. I want to hear it myself. Too dangerous. I don't care. Elara. These people destroyed my father. Her voice was steel. I've earned the right to watch them fall apart. Darian studied her face. Whatever he saw there made him nod slowly. Fine, but you follow my lead. Stay close. If things go wrong, they won't. If they do, he continued firmly, you run. You don't try to be a hero. You run, and you let me handle it. Elara wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes stopped her. All right, she agreed. The next 2 days were tense. Elara spent them preparing, learning the layout of the Pemberton estate, memorizing escape routes, practicing the kind of calm composure that would keep her from panicking if things went sideways. Darian spent them gathering more evidence, building their case stronger. On the evening of the 3rd day, as they prepared to leave for the Pemberton estate, Mrs. Rothwell appeared with a package. This arrived for Miss Vance, she said. No return address. Elara's stomach dropped. She took the package carefully, weighing it in her hands. Light, probably paper. She opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Her mother, standing outside her apartment building, one of Darian's guards visible in the background. Across the photo, in red ink, we know where she is. Elara's hands shook. Darian took the photo from her, his expression going dark. When was this taken? He demanded. Yesterday, Elara whispered. She recognized her mother's shawl, the blue one she only wore on Wednesdays. They got close enough to photograph her. Not close enough to touch her. Darian was already pulling out his communication device, sending rapid messages. I'm doubling the guard. Your mother is being moved tonight to a secure location. They'll find her again. Not where I'm sending her. He looked up. She'll be safe, I promise you. Elara wanted to believe him, but the photo in her hands was proof that promises meant nothing against people this determined. We should cancel tonight, she said. Regroup. Make sure… No. Darian's voice was firm. This is exactly what they want. They're trying to scare you, make you back down. It's working. Then fight through it. He moved closer, his hands on her shoulders. Your mother is going to be fine. My people are the best. They won't let anything happen to her. Elara closed her eyes, fighting the urge to run. To grab her mother and disappear somewhere these people would never find them. But running wouldn't solve anything. These families had resources, reach. They'd find her eventually. The only way to protect her mother was to destroy the threat. Okay, she said quietly. We go tonight. They took separate carriages to avoid attention. Elara's dropped her 3 blocks from the Pemberton estate, and she walked the rest of the way through servants' paths Darian had mapped out. The estate was smaller than Hastings, but more fortified. High walls, guards at every entrance. Darian met her at the designated spot, a gap in the wall hidden by overgrown ivy. "They're all here," he whispered. Catherine, the Ashfords, Pemberton, and 3 others, all gathered in the main study. "Can we hear them?" "Better." Darian gestured for her to follow. "I have someone inside." They crept through the shadows to a window overlooking the study. Inside, Elara could see the 6 family heads seated around a large table, all looking tense and hostile. Darian handed her a small device. "Put this in your ear." She did. Immediately, voices filled her head. "Absurd to suggest that I would betray this alliance." That was Pemberton, sounding affronted. "Then explain how Wolf knew about our meeting last month." Catherine's voice, sharp, accusatory. "That information was shared only with this group. Perhaps one of the servants—" "The servants know nothing of substance," Lord Ashford cut in. "This is clearly someone at this table." Silence, tense and ugly. "We're turning on each other." A woman's voice, Lady Pemberton. "Exactly what Wolf wants." "What he wants is irrelevant." Catherine again. "What matters is that one of us is feeding him information. And until we determine who, we're all vulnerable." "I won't sit here and be accused, then leave." Catherine's tone was ice. "But know that if you do, we'll assume you're the traitor." More silence. Elara watched through the window as the 6 family heads stared at each other with open suspicion. "The letters worked," she breathed. Darian nodded. "Keep listening." "I propose we each submit to questioning," Pemberton said, individually, under truth serum if necessary. "Truth serum can be resisted by anyone with proper training," Ashford countered, "and I refuse to subject myself to such indignity." "Then you have something to hide." "I have pride." Ashford stood, slamming his hands on the table. "I won't be treated like a common criminal." "Sit down," Catherine ordered. "We need to stay unified." "Unified?" Ashford laughed bitterly. "We're accusing each other of treason. That's the opposite of unified." He had a point. "Perhaps," a quieter voice spoke up, someone Elara didn't recognize. "Perhaps the traitor isn't at this table at all." Everyone turned to look at the speaker. "Explain," Catherine demanded. "What if Wolf is bluffing? What if he doesn't have an insider, just very good intelligence gathering? We're all powerful families. We have enemies, staff who might talk, business rivals who'd pay for information." Hope flickered across several faces. "That's possible," Pemberton said slowly. "It's probable," Ashford agreed. "Wolf is manipulating us, making us destroy ourselves while he watches." The mood in the room shifted. The paranoia didn't disappear, but it redirected, away from each other and toward Darian. "Damn," Darian muttered beside her. "They're adapting faster than I expected." "We need to give them something else," Elara said. "Something that proves the leak is real." "Like what?" Alara's mind raced. Then it hit her. "The photograph," she said. "The one they sent of my mother. It was meant to scare me. But it also proves they're coordinating, working together." So what if we send them proof that we intercepted their communication? That we knew about the photograph before it was delivered? Darian's eyes widened. "We can't. We didn't." "They don't know that." Elara pulled out her own communication device. "I can send a message now, to Catherine, time-stamped before I actually receive the package. Make it look like someone warned us." "That's—" Darian paused. "Actually brilliant." Elara was already typing. "Received your threat. The photograph of my mother was a nice touch, but your photographer should be more careful. My guards noticed him. Try again." She time-stamped it to yesterday morning and sent it through an anonymous routing system. "That'll reach her in about 5 minutes," she said, right in the middle of their meeting. They waited. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, Catherine's device chimed. She read the message. Her face went white. "What is it?" Pemberton demanded. Catherine held up her device. "Wolf intercepted our threat before it was delivered." The room erupted. "That's impossible, unless someone here warned him. I told you there was a traitor." Chaos descended, everyone talking over each other, pointing fingers, making accusations. Elara watched with fierce satisfaction as the alliance crumbled before her eyes. "We should go," Darian said. "Before they—" A hand grabbed Elara's shoulder. She spun, heart hammering. A guard stood there, one of Pemberton's men. "You're trespassing," he said. Darian moved fast, disarming the guard in 2 efficient motions. But the noise had attracted attention. More guards appeared. Too many. "Run," Darian ordered. They ran. Back through the gardens, toward the gap in the wall. Shouts followed them, footsteps pounding. Elara's lungs burned, but she pushed harder. They made it to the wall. Darian lifted her through first, then pulled himself up. A gunshot cracked the night. Darian jerked, stumbled. "No!" Elara grabbed his arm, hauling him through the gap. Blood soaked his sleeve. "I'm fine," he gritted out. "Keep moving." They ran until they reached the carriage. The driver took one look at Darian and snapped the horses into motion. Inside, Elara pressed her shawl against the wound. "You're not fine." "It's a graze." But his face was pale. "We need a doctor. We need to disappear." Darian leaned back against the seat. "They know we were there. They'll be looking for us." "Then where?" "Thornhaven." He closed his eyes. "It's the only place they won't dare attack directly." The carriage raced through the night. Elara kept pressure on the wound, her hands shaking. This was her fault. She'd pushed to be there, put them both at risk. "Stop," Darian said quietly. "What?" "Stop blaming yourself. I can see it in your face." "You got shot because of me." "I got shot because I chose to help you." He opened his eyes, met hers. "And I'd make the same choice again." Something in Elara's chest cracked open. They made it back to Thornhaven. Mrs. Rothwell took one look at the blood and immediately sent for the estate physician. The doctor, an older man who clearly knew better than to ask questions, cleaned and dressed the wound. "You were lucky, 1/4 inch to the left and it would have hit the bone." "Lucky is my specialty," Darian said dryly. After the doctor left, Elara sat beside the bed, exhaustion crashing over her. "Did it work?" she asked. "Did we do enough damage?" "More than enough." Darian adjusted his bandaged arm. "By tomorrow, those families will be tearing each other apart. The alliance is broken." "But they know we were there. They'll regroup, come after us harder." "Let them try." Darian's smile was fierce despite his pallor. "We just proved something tonight." "What?" "That we can strike at them on their own ground, in their own homes, that they're not as safe as they thought." He reached out with his good hand, touched her cheek. "You were magnificent, by the way." Elara's breath caught. "I almost got you killed." "You saved the mission." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "That message you sent, it was perfect. Exactly what we needed to fracture them. It was reckless. It was brave." His eyes held hers. "You're brave, Elara Vance. Braver than most people who've had a lifetime to cultivate courage." The weight of his words, his touch, made her throat tight. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Constantly." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." His hand dropped. "It's the people who aren't afraid that get themselves killed." A knock at the door interrupted them. Mrs. Rothwell entered with a message. "This just arrived. Urgent." Darian read it. His expression shifted. Surprise, then satisfaction. "What is it?" Elara asked. 3 of the 6 families just withdrew from the alliance." He handed her the message. "Catherine, Ashford, and Pemberton saw and pass. They've issued statements claiming they had no knowledge of any criminal activity and are fully cooperating with authorities. They're abandoning ship. They're trying to save themselves." Darian's smile was sharp. "Which means they're admitting there's something to be saved from." Elara read the statements, each one carefully worded to throw the others under the carriage while maintaining plausible deniability. "The alliance is dead," she said. "The alliance is worse than dead." Darian took the message back. "It's turned into a feeding frenzy. They'll devour each other trying to be the first to cooperate, the first to name names. And my father's name will be cleared. It already is." Darian pulled out another document, this one official, sealed with the territorial magistrate's mark. "This arrived an hour ago. Full exoneration. All charges dismissed posthumously. His reputation restored." Elara took the document with shaking hands. 8 years. 8 years of carrying the weight of her father's supposed crimes. 8 years of shame and anger and grief. And now, in one piece of paper, it was over. She read the words through blurring vision. Innocent of all charges. Victim of conspiracy. Wrongfully accused. A sob broke free before she could stop it. Darian pulled her close with his good arm, let her cry against his chest. He was innocent, she managed. Everyone will know. Everyone will know, Darian confirmed. And everyone will know who fought to prove it. Elara pulled back, wiping her eyes. We're not done yet. No. His smile was grim. But we're winning. Can you feel it? She could. The shift in power. The way fear had moved from their side to the other. For the first time since this started, Elara felt something other than rage and grief. She felt hope. Real, tangible hope that they might actually survive this, that they might actually win. What's next? She asked. Next, Darian said, we let them finish destroying themselves. Then we step in and claim what's left. That simple? That complicated. He winced, adjusting his injured arm. But we have time now. They're the ones scrambling, desperate. A message chimed on Elara's device. She read it, then read it again to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. What? Darian asked. It's from Celeste Hartwick. Elara's voice was stunned. She wants to meet. Says she has information about the families. Says she wants to help. Darian's eyes narrowed. It could be a trap. It could be genuine. Elara thought about Celeste, the girl who'd tried to protect her at the Ashford party, who'd seen what happened and hadn't looked away. She was kind to me when no one else was. Kindness doesn't equal loyalty. No, but fear does. Elara met his eyes, and after tonight, everyone in those families is terrified. Some of them will try to make deals, try to save themselves. You want to meet with her? I think we should. Elara stood, moving to the window. Dawn was breaking over the grounds. If she's genuine, she could have valuable information. If she's not, we'll be ready. Darian nodded slowly. All right. Set up the meeting. Neutral ground, public place, and I'm coming with you. You're injured. I'm functional. He stood, proving the point despite the pain that flickered across his face. And I'm not letting you walk into a potential trap alone. Elara smiled. Partners? Partners, Darian agreed. She sent the reply to Celeste. Tomorrow, the Royal Gardens, noon. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Darian positioned people throughout the gardens. Elara memorized exits and safe routes. By the time they arrived the next day, she was as ready as she'd ever be. Celeste was waiting by the fountain, dressed simply, no jewelry. She looked scared. Elara, she stood as they approached. Your Grace. Celeste. Elara studied her face. You wanted to talk. I want out. The words tumbled out fast. Out of all of this, the families, the lies, everything. Why? Darian asked. Because I'm not like them. Celeste's eyes were desperate. I never wanted to be part of their schemes, but my family, they're involved, deeply. And if they go down, I go with them Unless you make a deal first, Elara finished. Yes. Celeste looked ashamed. I know how that sounds, selfish, cowardly. It sounds smart, Elara said. What do you have? Celeste pulled out a folder. Financial records, communications, proof of bribes paid to officials, proof of blackmail, everything my father thought he'd hidden. Darian took the folder, flipped through it. His expression remained neutral, but Elara saw the satisfaction in his eyes. This is good, he said. Very good. There's more. Celeste swallowed hard. They're planning something. The families that are left. They're pooling resources for one final move against you. What kind of move? Elara asked. I don't know exactly. They wouldn't tell me details, but I heard my father on the phone. He said something about making sure you both disappear, permanently. Ice slid down Elara's spine. When? Darian's voice was sharp. Soon. This week, maybe. Celeste twisted her hands together. I can't be part of that. I won't. Elara believed her. The fear in her eyes was too real to fake. Help us, she said. Tell us everything you know. Names, dates, plans? I will. Celeste nodded rapidly. But I need protection. If they find out I talked to you, you'll have it. Darian pulled out his own communication device. As of now, you're under my protection, same as Elara. Celeste's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. They spent 2 hours in the gardens, Celeste spilling everything she knew. Names of officials who'd been bribed, details of illegal business deals, evidence of crimes that went back decades. By the time they finished, Elara's head was spinning. This is enough, Darian said finally. More than enough. The families won't recover from this. When do we release it? Elara asked. Tonight. His smile was sharp. All of it. Every document, every name. We flood the authorities with so much evidence they can't ignore it or bury it. They'll panic, Celeste said. They'll run, Darian corrected. And we'll be waiting. That night, they executed the plan. Documents were delivered to magistrates, journalists, investigators, a tsunami of evidence that couldn't be denied or dismissed. By morning, the city was in chaos. Arrests were made, assets frozen. The old families scrambled to protect themselves, but the avalanche had already started. Elara stood in Darian's study, watching reports come in, family after family falling. The empire of corruption her father had died fighting against, finally crumbling. It's working, she whispered. It's more than working. Darian handed her a newspaper. Look. The headline read, Marcus Thorne, vindicated hero or convenient martyr. But below it, in smaller text, evidence suggests reformer was murdered by aristocratic conspiracy. Her father. Finally being recognized for what he really was. Not a criminal, a hero. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them back. He would be proud of you, Darian said quietly. He would be horrified by what we did. Maybe. Darian moved to stand beside her. But he'd understand why. Elara looked down at the ring on her finger, still too large, still heavy, but starting to feel like it belonged there. What happens now? She asked. Now? Darian's smile was fierce. Now we finish what we started. The families are broken, but not destroyed. We need to make sure they never recover, never threaten anyone again. And after that? After that, he paused, something shifting in his expression. After that, we figure out who we are when we're not fighting. The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. Before Elara could respond, Mrs. Rothwell appeared in the doorway. Your Grace, Miss Vance, you have visitors. Who? Darian asked. The Territorial Council. Mrs. Rothwell's expression was unreadable. All 12 members, they're requesting an immediate audience. Darian and Elara exchanged looks. Show them in, Darian said. The council filed into the study, 12 of the most powerful non-aristocratic leaders in the territory. They looked serious, formal. The head counselor stepped forward. Your Grace, Miss Vance. He bowed slightly. We've come to express our gratitude. Elara blinked. Gratitude? For exposing the corruption that has plagued our territory for decades. The counselor's voice was firm. The arrests made this week represent the largest purge of criminal aristocracy in our history, and it's because of your efforts. We simply provided evidence, Darian said carefully. You provided justice. Another counselor spoke up. Something many of us have been trying to achieve for years. The head counselor pulled out an official document. The council has voted unanimously. We're offering you both positions as special investigators, with full authority to continue your work, to root out any remaining corruption, official recognition, legal authority, everything they'd been doing in the shadows, now sanctioned by the territory's governing body. Elara looked at Darian. He was already looking at her. We accept, they said together. The counselors smiled, real smiles, relieved and hopeful. After they left, after the official documents were signed and the congratulations offered, Elara and Darian stood alone in the study. We did it, she said. We actually did it. We're not done yet. But Darian was smiling. There's still work to do. I know. Elara moved to the window, looked out over the grounds. But for the first time, I think we might actually win. We've already won. Darian moved to stand beside her. Everything else is just cleanup. Elara thought about her father, about her mother, safe now in a secure location, about the families that had destroyed so many lives finally facing consequences, about the girl who'd walked into a ballroom covered in wine, and the duke who'd given her the power to fight back. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me. For believing I was worth the risk." Darian's hand found hers. "You were never a risk. You were an inevitability." Their fingers intertwined. The ring caught the afternoon light, throwing gold across both their hands. Outside, the city was changing. Power was shifting. Justice was being served. And inside Thornhaven, two people who'd started as strangers became allies and might be becoming something more, stood together and watched their world transform. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, they were winning it. The victory lasted exactly 3 days. On the fourth morning, Elara woke to the sound of breaking glass. She bolted upright, heart hammering. Dawn light filtered through her bedroom windows, and for a split second she thought she'd imagined it. Then she heard the shouting. Elara grabbed the robe Mrs. Rothwell had laid out and ran into the hallway. Guards were moving in formation toward the east wing. Darian appeared from his own rooms, pulling on a shirt, his injured arm still bandaged. "What's happening?" Elara demanded. "They're here." His voice was grim. "The families. What's left of them." "Here? At Thornhaven?" "Desperate people do desperate things." Darian grabbed her arm. "Come on. We need to get you to the safe room." "I'm not hiding." An explosion rocked the building. The floor buckled. Elara stumbled and Darian caught her. "They're bombing us?" she gasped. "They're ending this." Darian pulled her toward the stairs, one way or another. They made it to the ground floor. Through the windows, Elara could see figures moving across the grounds, at least 20 of them, maybe more. Armed, organized. This wasn't a panicked attack. This was planned. Mrs. Rothwell appeared, her usual composure cracked. "Your Grace, the guards are holding the perimeter, but they're outnumbered." "How many?" Darian asked. 40, maybe 50. "Where's the local militia?" 10 minutes out. We sent for them when the first breach occurred." 10 minutes. A lifetime in a firefight. Another explosion, closer this time. Part of the west wall collapsed inward. "The safe room," Darian said again more urgently. "Now!" But Elara was staring out the window at the attackers. She recognized some of them. Servants from the great houses, private guards, a few faces she'd seen at parties, and leading them, directing the assault with cold precision, was Catherine Blackwood. "She's here," Elara said. "Catherine, she's leading them." Darian looked. His expression went dark. "Of course she is. She has the most to lose." "What does she want?" "Us dead. The evidence destroyed. A chance to rebuild." He pulled Elara away from the window. "She's not getting any of it." They moved through the manor, Mrs. Rothwell leading them to a concealed door behind a bookshelf. It opened onto a staircase leading down. "This goes to the old cellars," she explained. "From there, tunnels connect to the stables. You can escape." "No!" Darian's voice was iron. "I'm not running from my own home." "Your Grace, get Miss Vance to safety. I'm going to end this." "The hell you are!" Elara grabbed his good arm. "You're injured. You can barely lift that arm." "What are you going to do? Glare them to death?" Despite everything, a smile flickered across his face. "I was thinking more along the lines of strategic negotiation." "They're bombing us. I don't think they're here to negotiate." "Then I'll improvise." He turned to Mrs. Rothwell. "Where did you put the emergency signals?" "Study, top drawer." Darian started toward the study. Elara followed. "You should go," he said without looking back. "We've had this conversation. I'm not going anywhere." Elara, partners, remember?" She caught up to him. "Equal stakes, equal risk." He stopped, turned to face her. For a moment, something raw showed in his eyes. "If something happens to you," he started, "then you'll avenge me spectacularly." Elara managed a smile. "Now, what's the plan?" The plan, such as it was, involved flare guns and a lot of faith in human self-preservation. They made it to the study. Darian pulled out 3 flare guns from the desk drawer, loaded them. "What are these for?" Elara asked. "Insurance." He moved to the window, calculated the angle. "Fire these, and the entire territory sees them, including every authority figure within 50 miles. So we're calling for help. We're making it very public that we're under attack." Darian handed her one of the flare guns. "Catherine and her people might be willing to kill us in secret, but mass murder in front of witnesses? That's a different calculation." "You're betting they'll back down." "I'm betting they'll hesitate, and hesitation is all we need." Elara looked at the flare gun, looked at Darian. "And if they don't hesitate? Then we've got 2 more of these and a lot of breakable windows." His smile was sharp. "We'll make it work." They fired the flares in sequence, red, green, red, the emergency signal for attack. The bright lights arced into the dawn sky, visible for miles. Within seconds, the bombing stopped. Elara moved to the window, careful to stay out of sight. The attackers had paused, looking up at the flares. She could see Catherine arguing with someone, gesturing wildly. "It's working," Elara breathed. Then Catherine pulled out a gun and shot the person she'd been arguing with. The body dropped. The other attackers froze. "Or not," Darian muttered. Catherine's voice carried across the grounds, sharp and clear. "Anyone else want to question me? We finish this now, before help arrives." The attackers hesitated for only a moment. Then they moved forward again, more determined than before. "She's lost it," Elara said. "She's willing to die rather than face justice." "Then we give her a third option." Darian pulled out his communication device, typed rapidly. "Mrs. Rothwell, I need you to do something for me." 5 minutes later, every speaker in Thornhaven Manor crackled to life. Darian's voice, amplified and inescapable, filled the grounds. "Catherine Blackwood, I know you can hear me." The attackers stopped again. Catherine's head snapped toward the manor. "You're right that you're out of options," Darian continued. "The evidence against you is already with the authorities. Killing us won't change that. It'll just add murder to your list of crimes." "You destroyed everything," Catherine screamed. "My family, my name, everything." "You destroyed yourself." Darian's voice was calm, relentless. "You and your friends chose greed over integrity, chose power over humanity. This is the consequence." "Spare me the moral lecture." Catherine fired a shot at the manor. Glass shattered. "You're no better than us. You used that girl, manipulated her." "He didn't manipulate me." Elara grabbed the communication device. "I chose this, chose to fight back, chose to expose what you did to my father." Silence from outside. Then Catherine laughed. The sound was unhinged. "Marcus Thorne's little girl. How touching. Tell me, does Wolf make you feel powerful? Does wearing his ring make you forget you're still nothing? No family? No breeding? No, I don't need breeding." Elara's voice was steel. "I have something better. I have the truth. And unlike you, I'm not afraid of it." "The truth?" Catherine's laugh turned bitter. "The truth is that your father was weak. He tried to change a system that's lasted centuries. And he lost. Just like you're about to lose." "My father wasn't weak." Elara moved to the broken window, letting Catherine see her. "He was brave. He stood up to people like you knowing it would cost him everything. And you know what? He'd do it again. Because that's what real strength looks like." Their eyes met across the distance. "And you're right," Elara continued. "I am going to lose something. We both are. But the difference is, I'm willing to pay the price. Are you?" Catherine raised her gun, pointing it directly at Elara. Darian moved to pull her back, but Elara held her ground. "Do it," she said quietly. "Pull the trigger. Add my murder to your crimes. But know that every authority figure in the territory saw those flares. They're coming. And when they get here, they'll find my body and your guilt." Catherine's hand trembled. "Or," Elara said, "you put down the gun. Surrender. Face trial. There's still a chance you could..." "Could what? Live out my days in prison?" Catherine's voice cracked. "Watch everything I built turn to ashes?" "You could tell the truth." Elara took a step closer to the window. "Name every person involved, every crime committed. Give those families' victims justice." "Why would I do that?" "Because it's the only way you get to keep any shred of dignity." Elara's voice softened. Because dying here accomplishes nothing except proving you're exactly as terrible as everyone now knows you are. For a long moment, Catherine stood frozen, gun still raised. Then slowly she lowered it. Stand down, she said to her people. All of you, stand down. Some of them hesitated, but when Catherine dropped her own gun, they followed suit. Sirens wailed in the distance, the militia, finally arriving. Darian let out a breath he'd been holding. You just talked down an armed mob. I just told the truth. Elara stepped back from the window, suddenly shaking. I don't think I can do that again. You won't have to. He pulled her close with his good arm. It's over. The militia arrived minutes later, surrounding the manor. The attackers were arrested without resistance. Catherine went quietly, her face blank, defeated. As she was led past the manor entrance, she looked up. Her eyes found Elara's. You won, she said simply. Elara nodded. Yes. Was it worth it? The question hung in the air. Elara thought about her father, about the years of grief and anger, about the violence and fear and risk. Yes, she said finally. It was worth it. Catherine smiled, sad, broken. Then I hope you can live with it. She was led away. Elara stood in the doorway, watching the sun rise fully over Thornhaven's damaged grounds, broken windows, scorched earth, evidence of battle, but still standing. Darian appeared beside her, his presence solid and warm. We need to talk about repairs, he said. We need to talk about a lot of things. Elara leaned against him, exhausted. Starting with how you always have a plan. Not always. His arm tightened around her. Sometimes I just have faith that you'll figure it out. They stood together, watching the militia secure the grounds, as the city woke to news of the attack. The days that followed were chaos of a different kind. Trials, testimonies. Catherine kept her word and named everyone involved in the conspiracy, 43 people in total, including judges, officials, and aristocrats. The scandal was massive enough to trigger governmental reforms. Elara testified at every trial, stood in front of packed courtrooms and told her story, all of it. Her father's innocence, the conspiracy against him, the years she'd spent planning revenge. Some people called her a hero, others called her a vigilante. She didn't care about either label. What mattered was that her father's name was cleared, officially, publicly, completely. 3 weeks after the attack, the territorial government issued a formal apology to the Thorne family. A memorial was commissioned, a statue of Marcus Thorne to stand in the Capitol Square, commemorating his reform efforts. Elara's mother was there for the unveiling. Darian had brought her from the safe house, given her a place at Thornhaven until things settled. Mrs. Thorne stood beside her daughter, tears streaming down her face, as the cloth fell away from her husband's stone likeness. "He would be so proud of you," she whispered. Elara couldn't speak, could only hold her mother's hand and stare at her father's face, frozen in bronze, finally honored as he deserved. The crowd applauded. Speeches were made. The head counselor presented Elara with a medal, the Territorial Star, awarded for exceptional service. Darian stood in the crowd, watching with something soft in his eyes. That night, back at Thornhaven, Elara found him in the library. He was reading through documents, his injured arm finally free of bandages. "How's it feel?" she asked, gesturing to his arm. "Better." He flexed it experimentally. Still sore, but functional. "Good." Elara moved to sit across from him. "Because I need to talk to you about something." His expression shifted, became guarded. "All right. This partnership we have..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "What happens now that the fight is over?" Darian set down his papers. "What do you want to happen?" "I'm asking you. And I'm asking you." His eyes met hers. "Because the answer matters to me." Elara's pulse quickened. "I don't want to go back to who I was before. The girl who hid, who lied about her name, who was scared all the time. You were never that girl." Darian leaned forward. "You were always this one. You just needed a reason to show it. You gave me that reason. You gave yourself that reason." He stood, moved around the desk to stand in front of her. I just opened the door. You walked through it. Elara stood too, so they were eye level. I want to stay, here, at Thornhaven. Keep working with you. Keep fighting corruption. As my partner? As your equal. She lifted her chin. I'm not your weapon. I'm not your student. I'm mine. The word came out rough, final. If you want to be. Elara's breath caught. What? Darian's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek. I've watched you fight. Watched you refuse to break even when you should have. Watched you stand up to people twice your age with twice your power and make them blink first. His eyes were intense. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as a partner and started seeing you as the only person I want standing beside me for the rest of my life. Elara's heart hammered. That sounds like it is. He smiled, and it was real. Warm. Marry me, Elara Vance, not because I'm a duke and you need protection, but because I'm a man who's found someone who matches him in every way that matters. She should have been shocked, should have asked for time, should have been rational. Instead, she grabbed his shirt and pulled him down into a kiss. He responded immediately, his arms wrapping around her, pulling her close. The kiss was fierce and claiming and absolutely right. When they finally broke apart, Elara was breathless. Is that a yes? Darian asked. That's a yes. She laughed. That's absolutely a yes. He kissed her again, softer this time. Reverent. The ring's going to fit better on your wedding finger, he murmured against her mouth. I've gotten used to it being too big. Everything about this has been too big. Darian pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Too dangerous, too fast, too impossible. And yet here we are. Here we are. He touched his forehead to hers, ready to make it official. They were married 6 weeks later in a ceremony that scandalized the remaining aristocracy and delighted everyone else. No grand cathedral, no hundreds of guests. Just a simple ceremony in Thornhaven's gardens, attended by friends, allies, and the people who'd helped them bring down the conspiracy. Elara wore white, not because tradition demanded it, but because she wanted to reclaim that color. Wanted to stand in white silk without shame, without fear, without wine stains marking her as someone to be discarded. Her mother cried through the entire ceremony. Celeste Hartwick stood as Elara's attendant, having become a genuine friend in the aftermath of everything. And Darian looked at Elara like she was the only person in the world worth seeing. When they exchanged vows, he spoke in a voice meant only for her. I promise to stand with you, fight beside you, never ask you to be smaller than you are. Elara's own vows came from somewhere deep and honest. I promise to match you, challenge you, remind you that power means nothing without purpose. They sealed their promises with a kiss that was witnessed by everyone but felt private nonetheless. The celebration afterward was joyful in a way Elara had never experienced. No careful social maneuvering, no watching her words, just honest happiness. At one point, she found herself standing with her mother watching Darian talk with the council members. You did it, her mother said softly. Everything you set out to do. We did it. Elara squeezed her hand. Father would have been terrified and proud in equal measure. Her mother smiled, just like I am. I'm sorry I put you through this. Don't be. Her mother turned to face her fully. You gave your father justice, gave our family our name back, gave yourself a future. She touched Elara's cheek. I'm not sorry for any of it. Across the garden, Darian caught Elara's eye, smiled. Elara smiled back. Later, after the guests had left and the night had settled over Thornhaven, Elara and Darian stood together on the balcony of their shared rooms. The city stretched out below them, lights flickering like earthbound stars. What are you thinking? Darian asked. That 6 months ago, I was standing in a ballroom covered in wine, convinced my life was over. Elara leaned against the railing. And now I'm here with you, with power, with a future I actually want. Regrets? None. She turned to face him. You? Only that I didn't intervene sooner. His hand found hers. I watched you for months before that night, saw you maneuvering through those parties, building your network, planning your revenge. Part of me wondered if you'd succeed on your own. Why didn't you let me try? Because you would have gotten yourself killed. He pulled her close. You had the anger and the intelligence, but you didn't have the protection, the resources. Someone had to give you a fighting chance. So you decided to be my knight in expensive armor? I decided to be your partner, he corrected. The armor was just a bonus. Elara laughed, then sobered. The trials start next month for the remaining families. I know. It's going to get ugly again. Probably. Darian's arms tightened around her. But we'll face it together, like everything else. Together. Elara tested the word, liked how it felt. I could get used to that. Good. Because you're stuck with me now. Promises, promises. He kissed her, slow and thorough, until the city and the trials and everything else faded to background noise. When they finally pulled apart, Darian rested his forehead against hers. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For being brave enough to fight back. For trusting me when you had every reason not to. For choosing this life even though it would have been easier to walk away. I couldn't walk away. Elara's voice was soft. Not from this. Not from you. No more walking away, Darian promised, for either of us. No more hiding, Elara agreed. They stood together in the darkness, two people who'd found each other in chaos and built something solid from the wreckage. Below them, the city continued its eternal rhythm. Above them, stars wheeled through an indifferent sky. And in between, in that perfect moment of peace before the next battle, Elara Vance, now Elara Wolf, allowed herself to simply be happy. The girl who'd been humiliated in public was gone. The woman who'd claimed her power had taken her place, and she was finally, completely, undeniably free. The trials did get ugly. Catherine testified against everyone, providing detailed accounts of decades of corruption. Some defendants tried to flee, others attempted to buy their way out. None of them succeeded. The old power structure crumbled completely. New reforms were passed. The Territorial Council, emboldened by public support, pushed through laws that would have made Marcus Thorne proud. Land redistribution, rights for tenants, protections for workers, everything he'd died trying to achieve. Elara attended every session, sitting in the gallery, making sure every defendant saw her face, saw what happened when you underestimated the daughter of the man you destroyed. Darian sat beside her. Always. 6 months after their wedding, on what would have been Marcus Thorne's 60th birthday, Elara stood at his grave with flowers in her hands. The headstone had been replaced. The old one, small, cheap, marking the grave of a supposed criminal, was gone. In its place stood marble and bronze, inscribed with the truth. Marcus Thorne, reformer, visionary, beloved father and husband, vindicated. Elara placed the flowers at its base. I did it, she said quietly. Everything I promised. Your name is cleared. The people who destroyed you are paying for it. And the reforms you wanted, they're happening. Slowly, but happening. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees. I wish you could have seen it, could have known, her voice cracked. Could have watched me fight for you. A hand settled on her shoulder, Darian giving her space but staying close. He did see it, Darian said softly. Maybe not literally, but you carried him with you through all of this. His values, his courage, his refusal to accept injustice. I wanted him to be proud of me. He would be. Darian's certainty was absolute. Anyone would be proud to call you their daughter. Elara leaned back against him, letting his warmth steady her. We should go, she said finally. The council meeting is in an hour. We have time. I know, but I'm ready. She touched the headstone once more. I'm ready to stop looking backward and start looking forward. They walked back to the carriage together, hand in hand. The city was changing around them, slowly, painfully, but changing. And at the center of that change stood two people who'd taken their trauma and rage and grief and forged it into something that mattered. A partnership built on respect, a marriage built on choice, a legacy built on justice. Elara had started this journey as a girl with nothing but anger and a fake name. She ended it as a duchess, a reformer, a force powerful enough to topple empires. But more than that, she ended it as herself, Not Marcus Thorne's daughter, defined by his death. Not Darian Wolf's wife, defined by his power. Just Elara. Survivor, fighter, woman who refused to break. And that, more than any title or victory, was worth everything she'd risked to achieve it. Years later, when historians wrote about the great territorial reforms, they would debate the details, argue about motivations, question methods. But they couldn't deny the results. A corrupt system, dismantled. Innocent lives, avenged. And at the heart of it all, a girl who walked into a ballroom covered in wine and walked out wearing a duke's ring. The girl who became a duchess. The duchess who became a legend. Elara Wolf, née Thorne. Untouchable, unforgettable, free.